Hey friends, I'm so excited for today's episode and just to do our little intro here because I am excited and I have ADHD, so I definitely get sidetracked. So my name is Sarah Lacko and I've always been fascinated by people's stories and their hardships and how they overcome those hardships or those struggles and turning their pain into their power and sometimes their passion. And so we get to talk to those true underdogs where they have the odds stacked against them and they rise above, and we get to learn from them and grow with them and pick their brains. And also, we're starting sponsors on the show and I'm so excited about it. So today's sponsor is actually my backpacking course. So it's called the Badass Backpacking Babes and it's our second year doing this and I'm very excited. There's a course and a retreat and that is becoming available April 4th, and you are able to combine both the course and the retreat or just do one or the other. So we get to learn how to start backpacking, and then with that retreat, we get to implement that backpacking. So we learn, grow, become empowered through nature, and become more confident within ourselves through nature. Nature is the best therapeutic tool that I have come to find out in my life. And so now I just share that with others. So very excited about it. So check out and keep posted. I'll put a link in our intro and you can click on that link to get more information. So enough about that. Let's talk about who we are interviewing today. Friend, please introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you. And I want to come on that trip. It sounds great. And my name is Kelsey Brown. And I call myself a community alchemist. You know, I don't love the typical titles that are out there. And I also own my own business. So that's my personal title that I've given myself. Within being a community alchemist, I lead people through their own personal ritual discovery. So ritual meaning, really how you hold space for yourself every day, and ritual being different than routine. So if you're interested in that, more to come. And I am a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, leading teacher trainings here in Denver at the River Yoga. And I also lead backcountry retreats. So that's why I love hearing about who's sponsoring this episode in particular.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that. And we're definitely going to get to the point where Kelsey tells us about where we can find her. And she really is a great person to follow. And so, but we'll get there. So Kelsey, I'd love to start from the beginning, like how you grew up. What did your childhood look like?
Yeah, I was born in North Carolina, the third child in my family, very close in age with my siblings. It was like, 1, 2, 3 right on top of each other. So grew up in very, very close connection with my siblings. Both my parents are teachers. So a lot of education and play and outdoors. And I was a pretty nervous child, which is interesting, something that I'm learning that really contributes to my journey now. Being the youngest and the baby, kind of like afraid to leave the nest and trying to keep up with my older siblings, I was always somewhat reserved. And my parents always were asking, why? Why don't you want to do sleepovers? Why are you afraid of dogs? All of these questions, and I had no answers for them. It was just this internal feeling. Other than that, let's see what else is important. I grew up with school and extracurriculars being a big focus in my family. One of my dad's favorite sayings before we went to school was "Be the best you can be," which I took, I think, to an extreme sometimes as a child, just in the culture that we can all grow up in, of like achieving and achievement. You're rewarded for good grades, you're rewarded for doing more. And that quote from him, in speaking to him now, it was kind of just like always put your best foot forward, but the word choice came off as like, be the best, and I loved people and friends growing up. I've always thought of myself as kind is the word. And that was hard for me to think of being a great and beautiful and wonderful thing when I was younger. And now looking back on it, I know it is one of my superpowers of just having a kindness and a true interest in all people. And that definitely was prevalent at a young age. So very traditional upbringing with a really lovely family, and also a lot of doing and pressure to keep up with, good grades, go to college, all of these things that kind of keep us structured in a bubble, if you will, of society.
Absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, like so many people can feel that and align with that and relate to that, because I mean, it is so much in society, and we get our self-worth by all the things that we do. Like that's just, it's kind of ingrained in us, and not necessarily even like from our parents, like you said, like he said, a choice, right? So it's not even like necessarily coming from our parents, but it's just like it's coming from all angles: school, sports, society. Sometimes we do feel a little bit from parents, even though they don't like mean to or whatever, and friends. So that self-worth almost equals like how much you do and how much you achieve. And so that is like a ton of pressure, especially as like a young child, because you're just like observing this and you're saying, okay, well, I have to do more, I have to do better. And so it's super stressful and just overwhelming. So I love how you say that, because I mean, I can relate to that, and I know so many other people can too. So before like you came across like your hardship, like your kind of like your turning point, and that struggle, where were you like physically, mentally, like where were you right before that happened or that started to happen?
Yeah, so my hardship, my struggle was pretty early on in my life in terms of when I developed my eating disorder. I'll just name it, kind of thing. And where was I right before it? I was a freshman in high school, transitioning from private middle school to the public high school, and just lost in my body. Kind of already felt like this culture of keeping up wasn't serving me, but I didn't know how to stop. And looking for more ways to achieve, looking for more ways to do more, to fit into those structures. And also at the same time, looking for ways to not internally. And so in this like self struggle, and still at that age, even of, ripe 14 or 15, had only started just doing sleepovers, was still pretty nervous in my own skin, and relied heavily on my close relationships, family, friends, and my tight-knit group of just that safety net.
Totally. And what a great point. Like that you were like trying, to fit in, but then, or like, you didn't say necessarily fit in, but like achieving and whatever, but also kind of like fighting the system, like teenagers, like we're trying to be accepted, but we're trying to be individuals. And so, yeah, there's definitely that inner struggle between those two. So I love how you say that, because yeah, can definitely, what teenager cannot relate to that? So tell us about like what your like lower point was, like kind of where it came to that turning point, where it was like where you had these two options that there's, when we have those low points or those really difficult points, there's two ways we can go. We can spiral in it, or we can start to like be like, okay, I can't live mentally in this place anymore. I can't live physically in this place anymore. So what happened with that? What did you know needed to change? And what did happen for you to know that there needed to be a change?
Yeah. So we're going to fast forward many, many years later for that moment to come, almost 15.
And between those 15 years, were you having your eating disorder during that whole 15 years? You were, okay.
Yeah. So my eating disorder presented as anorexic and bulimic, kind of juggle between the two, mostly anorexic when I was younger, which is very typical if you know anything about eating disorders. Your body eventually kind of reaches a point where they can't maintain like homeostasis while you're providing it with no food. So you transfer or kind of grow into binging and purging, because bulimia will give you that quick calorie, that quick fix, and then you're not comfortable in that. So it's very typical to see eating disorders move from anorexia to bulimia. But I had, many different points throughout my life over the past, 15 years where I was like, this is not serving me. I need help. I'm not okay. I've ended up in the hospital twice from drinking too much, from not eating along with that, once even in high school, and, started to see therapists, but I was so in the depths of it. And it was at that point serving me as in my head, right, is what I like to remind people until you realize you need help, right? In some way, I had this relationship with it where it was serving me. And mostly it was serving my need to do more, be better, and meet goals, right? And things that I couldn't do in society in terms of that structure of like, do more, be more, deserve more, I could do with food. I could control that. It was something I could do to a T. And so that is really the root and the stem of that for me. And so throughout my 15 years, college, all of these things, I, was a functioning human who somehow made it through, did great in school, all of these things, but I was closed off on the inside. I was dead on the inside. And I was kind of like a walking blur, just going through the motions, doing so much, buzzing around. And what came to a head was during the pandemic. My eating disorder morphed into, I almost want to call it its own entity, its own being, where I was no longer served by it. I was being destroyed by it. I was binging and purging for hours during a day, which had never happened to me before. It was always like when I would reach a point of being hungry enough, I would binge and purge, but this was like, I was waking up and, once I got through my workday, which looked very different during COVID, right? I was living alone, and there would be some days where it would be, 3 hours of just like bread and cheese and all of this very, very, for me, I will say now, I don't want to use the word disgusting, but like disgusting, right? Like this entity would enter me, I almost felt like, and you could black out and just come out of your binge and purge. And I would make eye contact with myself and I would be like, this is not you. What is happening? I would even talk to myself in the mirror and really question myself, because I knew at this point, I knew so heavily that this was destroying me and that this was not serving me anymore, and could not even connect a dot back to why I would still be doing this. And I went to a friend's barbecue and ended up getting really drunk because I wasn't eating. And my best friend from high school lives out here with me. And We woke up the next day because she helped me home and everything. And she said, I can't do it anymore. I can't. I won't go out in public with you. I can't. You want to hang out at home, you want to do something, but I can't be this person for you anymore. And it was in that moment where I realized I had already had this inkling with myself, right? Where I realized that this was not just affecting me. It was affecting my loved ones, and it had been for 15 years. On and off, highs and lows, and this idea of, if that's what's most important to me, right? This reciprocal relationship with the people I love, then I need to look at my relationship with myself and give that to myself too. And I didn't want to lose friends and family to my disorder. And so fast forward a month later, my friend Jamie, she educated, some of our other closest friends from growing up on what was going on. And I have another friend who actually went to eating disorder treatment. And I hadn't spoken to her in a long time, like on this level of in-depth conversation. And she just reached out and she was like, when I went to treatment, there were 2 people that I thought of, and you were one of them. And I thought of you because I wished so fully in my heart that you would know that freedom is possible. And I started bawling and just was like, who is she to say this kind of thing? I haven't, told her what's going on so fully in my life in the past 5 years. And of course we were on each other's peripheral and we were always have that bond that we'd always have. But I was kind of in that stage of nobody knows how much help I need, while also researching treatment centers at the same time, in my own time. So those 2 events really catapulted me into this gut feeling of, am I going to do this? Is this how much help I need? I'm fine on the outside. Nobody would guess that I need this much help. But I was really sick. And I couldn't go on anymore. I loved life. That's one thing I never lost. I love life too much to keep living like that. And so I drove home across the country with one of my other best friends, sat my family down and said, hey, look, September 1st, I'm going to treatment. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know if insurance will cover it. And I'm so grateful that I could take that to them and be that vulnerable. And everyone in my family looked at me and said, we've known. You have to choose. It's a choice. We're here to support you in whatever you need. And I spent 2 weeks at home with my family researching spaces and places, and ended up going to a treatment center in Montana in 2020, September 2020.
Wow. That's wow. And also, you had talked about how from a young age, you just loved people. And for someone that you loved and cared about to come to you and to say that, first of all, kudos to her, because that must have been super difficult. That's a very uncomfortable thing. But then for that to kind of kickstart your brain and going, oh my gosh, the thing that I hold dear to me, loving people and connecting with people. And now what I thought I had under control and I thought was just within me is really affecting everybody else. And it's pushing people away at this point. And so sometimes that happens too, where we aren't able to show up in that way for ourselves, but we're able to for someone else, right? To have those loved ones, whether it's your child or your friend or your parents or your siblings, to have that, sometimes that is just the push that we need to say, oh my gosh, like this is affecting everything. And I do love them so much, because we don't have necessarily that love for ourselves at that moment, but we have that love for them. So to use that love for them to push us in that direction, then in turn, later it takes a little time, but then we start to like love ourselves and do that stuff for ourselves. So I mean, that's just an amazing turn of points. And just some people might not be able to relate to having anorexia or the eating disorder, but from all the things that you're saying are so relatable, and possibly just in different ways. And so sometimes that is that turning point, is just by having that love and that push from people around us to then start to do things for them, but then in turn for ourselves. So I think that's amazing. And I would love to find out like how you did end up. So you went to that facility in Montana. How did you start to work through those things and face through those things? What tools and what ended up helping you to, work through that and start to work through it and process it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to touch on what you said. Like, even if you didn't have an eating disorder, right, our coping mechanisms all present in different ways. So we all can relate to having a way that we deal with keeping up with society or shoving our emotions somewhere else, right? And so whether it's an eating disorder or a different addiction or something else, right, that you're just going through, just this idea of meeting it with love, whether it's through a loved one reminding you or meeting it with love yourself. And how did I start to work through it? I will say, once I decided to go, it was a breath out. It was like this big breath out of like, whoa, I needed this. Oh, like, thank goodness. And obviously it wasn't always a breath out while I was there. Like, let me tell you, it's definitely not. But first thing that they really focus on at a treatment center, and I'll name it, it was Eating Disorder Center Montana, EDCMT. Highly recommend the facility. And it was, really about getting my brain and my body back online. So a starved brain is not functioning. There are, so many statistics I could rattle off, but I'll just recommend a book. It's called Sick Enough, which is all about how eating disorders don't present as being sick enough, right? But actually, like, my brain was so turned off and not firing, and I was foggy, but I didn't realize it because I've been living like that for so long. So a lot of what they do is really working with a nutritionist and a team, obviously a therapist, group therapy, all of these things. But the first thing is nourishing your brain and your body to the point of really a space of reality again, a space of being alive and awake again in your life. So we would have meals every morning, 8 a.m., lunch, noon, and then dinners were off. Like, I lived in a group home where we all cooked dinner together or individually, and we supported each other. And in between meals was one-on-one therapy, art therapy, music therapy, grounding, meditation before each meal. So, what I'd like to say is they changed the pace of my life. They changed the pace of my life. The most important thing was no longer keeping up with society. It was no longer all of the deadlines that we have to meet, or even the people that you want to impress, or the life that you want to create, even, right? The most important thing became my health. And that was the biggest thing that shifted for me while I was there. Through slowing my pace enough to realize how important being in connection with my brain, my body, my heart, every part of me was. And I'll say, my two favorite uh, I loved all of it, actually. I'm not going to lie. My best friend and I, Jill, shout out Jill, and I would walk every morning to breakfast. And she made a joke to me once. She was like, Kels, like, I'm just going to say, we're kind of living the dream right now. And I was like, Jill, we are not living the dream. Make that. And she's like, no, I know. We're totally not. But also, like, big picture, we get to be supported every single day by each other, by beautiful therapists, by Montana's nature, by nourishing food from like a chef who just had the biggest heart, from all of these angles. And she's like, we're in eating school and we should love it. And no, not every day felt like that, but it was just these simple moments like that, slowing down enough to say, like, yeah, the next meal is the most important thing. And then the next breath. And, I really think removing myself from my space and my life was also really necessary from that. I couldn't have gone to treatment in Denver. I couldn't have found a team on the ground or anything. I needed to completely halt what I was doing and interrupt my patterns, flop them on their, excuse my cursing, but fucking head, like flop them. Like, no. And yeah.
So yeah, because sometimes that whole like disconnecting, because even when you weren't saying it, you still were like going, doing those different things, focusing on yourself versus, your past, of focusing on everything else and doing all the things and making all the accomplishments and getting all the grades, and so really being able to, because I mean, in our society, it's just so fast paced. And it just feels like we're going like 110 miles an hour all the time. And when that's happening, we are not able to connect to ourselves, because it's almost like we're in that survival mode of, it's like running that race and trying to survive through that race, that you do not have time to stop and check in with yourself. Also, that's because, we haven't made that time also, like when you're doing, but when you have that pattern of just living like that constantly, for you to be able to disconnect from that fast pace, because I mean, it sounds like you had that fast paced life. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Okay.
Out of the house 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, that's intense. Right. And when are you going to be able to really connect with yourself? Because after that, like, I would assume you'd be exhausted and tired and, laying down and, whatever that looked like, whether it was, binging Netflix, like it's different for everyone. But that's still that, like, that time not to, you're just too exhausted to connect with yourself. So be able to remove yourself, do the art, talk to people, have the meals, and have the sit down meals where it's like, it's a bonding thing too. Like, I love that they had you, cook meals and do that together, like as a community, because that is something that's really beautiful about food is, brings family together, brings friends together. And so be able to do that. I mean, those are extremely great tools, and you'll have to give me the link to that place, because we'll definitely include it in the show notes. So if you're interested, it will be there for you to click on if that is something that you are looking for yourself. And so what great tools that you use to go through that, and that you were able to take that time. And sometimes it is it's going to a facility. Sometimes it is doing the retreat. Sometimes it is taking a weekend by yourself. Like, it looks different for each person based on what they're dealing with or how they feel or what works for them. But really taking that time sometimes, you guys, to pull away, disconnect, get off the phone, get into your heart space, get into your mind space versus being in your head about things is just so important. And not only is it amazing for you as the individual, but for all the people around you. So tell me about when you came back and what that looked like. So yes, you had your hard days in that facility, because I mean, that's just life, right? You're having to work through things, you're having to process through things, you're having to face through things. So that in itself, like facing our fears, facing our struggles, facing things that we are not proud of or ashamed of or embarrassed by, to face that and work through it is extremely difficult. So kudos to you, even though you felt that release, that relief, that breath, that fresh of breath air, because you were starting to, get answers for yourself and start to work through that. What a difficult thing to do and to face. So, I mean, kudos to you for doing that. It's beautiful, scary, but I mean, yeah, it's very impressive. So when you got home and then had to work through this stuff through a different way, you didn't have all that support, you didn't have necessarily those, like, that community that you had probably bonded with tremendously. What did that look like coming home for you and working through that on your own?
Yeah, I would say integration was much harder than treatment,
I
as
believe that.
in most things. And if you're, involved in the plant medicine world at all, like, it's like the integration is what's the most important part for healing, right? And the same thing with any type of, I believe, addiction, any type of treatment, healing, even a retreat, like that integration back into life, being like, wait, this is how I want to live, right? And so I will admit that my life went back to the same pace pretty quickly, but I was fueling myself. And so there was a stark difference of me being like, wow, I can do this. I can keep up because I'm energized and my brain's online and yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of honestly, for a good 6 months to a year, I kept that same pace. I did kind of just swirl back in. I want to shout out to my mom and my sister too, because my first 2 weeks being back, they flew out, and it was right around the time of my birthday, and they spent 2 weeks. They got an Airbnb around the corner from me. I was also in the space of, I'm just getting back. I need to go back to real life. You guys can't visit. Da, 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 da. And they were like, no, we're coming, and having them there for that grounded meal time, dinners each night, all of that was beyond supportive. And we were still there, in the middle of a pandemic. So it meant a lot for them to be in my space, to be there supporting me. And, the past 2 years, sometimes I forget how recent going to treatment was for me. I've hit a bump in like the past 3 months. I've gotten, a bacteria when I was traveling, Giardia, E. coli, and I'm now going through a big, gut healing journey in terms of leaky gut, which is also very common for recovered eating disorder patients to get, just based on how you treated your gut and your body. So I will say it's been a bit more challenging because I don't have the same tools at my fingertips of seeing a therapist, every other day, group therapy every day, art therapy, all of these things. And what the most recent kind of bump in the road for me, this bacteria and gut healing journey has really asked me to do, is to not just change how I'm fueling my body, but to change the pace of my life. And going back to that I found in Montana, and really figuring out my relationship with rest, and rest for rest. Like, it ends there. I'm not resting to do something. I am resting. That's it. And when you're resting, you're not doing something. Like, the podcast is off, right? What about laying down on the floor with a blanket? And that's it. But you're present and you're awake for your rest. And so I think, long story short, is just integration has been a much more challenging, because the outside world is there, still busy, still going, still, moving at that pace. And it's up to me now, because not everyone around me is in a treatment center, right? That's not where I have to be every day. It's choice. Now I'm faced with the choice of saying, what can my body and my person maintain to live a healthy, fulfilled lifestyle? Wow, a lot of what's happening around us is quite chaotic and not supportive to that.
Oh man, oh, love that. And for rest, because I'd like to make that clear, like, so you talked about like laying down with a blanket, right? Tell us like what, like to you, what does rest really look like? That's part of it, right? What are different ways that you do to rest and connect with you and to slow down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I feel like rest for me is really finding a way to speak to my heart and my body and allow messages from it to come online. So anything that really can support that, and it will look different all the time. It could just be sitting in the sunshine. Some days I do have, the energy to maybe take a bath or something. Like even that, like I find rest to be something where it's really just more stillness with yourself, silence with yourself, enough for you to have conversations with yourself. So it could be stillness in the bath, stillness on your rug, stillness in your bed, stillness in nature, but just that extra intentional pause, maybe even some self-massage, self-hugs, things like that, where you're just like acknowledging your body and really coming online with it. Legs up the wall is great yoga pose that I do for that as well. And yeah, I think those are my big ones.
And I love how you say like it kind of looks different, and even having the energy to have a bath. Literally yesterday was a hard day for me, and I was just kind of like drained, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a bath. I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna have a soaking bath with some Epsom salt. And I didn't do it. I didn't have the energy, right, to go and to give myself that bath. And so I just kind of like sat with myself and just was being and just thinking and reflecting. So I love how you say it looks different at different times. I think it's important for us all to realize that. Sometimes it's great to kind of like figure out like what that looks for you, kind of put it, maybe it's a bath, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's reading in your favorite chair in the sunlight, maybe it's just being outside in the sunlight and sitting there, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's a yoga class. But at least if you kind of have that like toolbox of those things and you're like, okay, I'm not gonna mindlessly scroll on reels on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, or a TikTok. I'm not going to mindlessly like binge a TV show. I'm going to be mindful, but also giving myself that time to rest and to be and to reconnect is just the hugest thing. And I think sometimes too, I've heard people say where I just sat and I just stared at the wall. And that's a good thing, but it's also telling your body too that you are truly in the need to connect with yourself. So if you just like can't move and you're just like staring, that is a good indicator that you have kind of pushed yourself to the limit where you haven't had that time to connect with yourself. So I love the options that you give us. They're perfect. And it is true. It depends on how you're feeling and where you're at and how much energy you have. You might not have energy to do that yoga class or whatnot. So yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you for that. And that's what continues to help you through your way is those types of tools. Also, you do like rituals. You have kind of like, you offer your own rituals, and that must be something that helps you as well, is to kind of have those rituals set in place. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. Rituals. So the way I define ritual is it's a practice where the meaning is available in the present moment. And so I always like to just dive into that. Whereas routines are, or habits are generally practices that are laddering up to a goal or a meaning outside of the here and now. So that's just something I like to remind people as you're like kind of looking, well, do I have rituals or routines in my life, right? And so some rituals of mine are meditation in the morning. And like you said, it looks different and you love how it looks different every day. I won't say that I'm like 20 minutes every day or like 5 minutes every morning and I set a timer and I do it at the exact same time. I'm telling you, no, that does not work for me. And we wake up different every day. Yes, we are creatures of habits. So I try to fit in my meditation sometime before 9 a.m. But it's not like it's perfect and on the same cushion and all of these things. That's not how it works for me. But I do find silent meditation to be really, 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 really grounding. And then I move my body in some way as well, and always have a warm drink and make it with extra foam because that's really cozy for me. And so my rituals are pretty simple in the morning. And then in the evening, I actually struggle with evening ritual. I will say that. That's something that's more difficult for me. But I try to do legs up the wall and make a cup of tea and read before bed. And then
Oh, we kind of lost her. You there, Kelsey? Technical difficulties. Kelsey? Oh no, we lost her. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Oh, now I can't hear you. Are you on mute? Oh, you're on mute.
do you know where you heard me last chatting?
I think I panicked and was like, oh God, she's frozen and she's gone.
Oh no, I'm back.
Well, we talked about the PM that was harder for you. I definitely can relate to that. Yeah, so that's basically where we left off. Oh no, you're frozen again. You're on mute too.
I don't know. I'm not gonna move.
No moving.
Connection is great. And then
mine is too.
Yeah. But and then I was just saying meal ritual is really important to me. That's where I went after PM, of just taking deep breaths before my meals and trying to separate them from my meetings and pausing for meals and not like eating while you're eating, not eating while you're doing other things. So that's a really powerful one. And then end of the week, Sundays, I am all about my astrology app. It's called the Chani app. I listen to a weekly reading from the owner of that, Chani Nichols, and or Shani. I might be pronouncing that wrong, want to be clear. And I do journal prompts and ritual around that to kind of set my week up for the week ahead, which is really supportive for me.
Absolutely. And it helps you get like a handle. You know, you kind of reflect on the week prior, and then you get to go forward and, you know, grow and work on the things that you're trying to accomplish that next week. You know, whether it's like, you know, tasks or things for yourself or whatnot.
Yeah.
That's some good feedback.
Two other ones that are important too that I just want to name are I'm implementing a Sabbath from technology every week. So And I'm trying to do that for at least 12 hours, if not 24. That's
And
been a
yeah,
roller coaster to implement, and then getting into nature every day.
those are great
Whether
ones.
it's going outside, right? And that's something also that's important with ritual. Like, it's not fancy. Ritual is, it doesn't need to be this like beautiful candle setup or this like gorgeous dinner that you host once a week, right, with your friends. It's just real. It's real right now, available in the present moment, and a lot more simplistic than we think.
Absolutely. Thanks for touching on that, because it is true. It can be something so simple. And sometimes we just make it like bigger in our heads that it needs to look a certain way, like we've seen on social media or whatever. And so, but really, yeah, it can just be sitting outside. It can be just sitting in the grass. It can, sometimes for me, it's just staring at the window and like looking at the birds like flying. Like, so great point that it doesn't need to look perfect. We get stuck in that whole perfection thing sometimes, that if I'm going to do it, it needs to be perfect. And really, it's about having that maintenance, being realistic, and just making things more simple for ourselves. And then it's so much more attainable. And yeah, and then we're actually able to like follow through, and maybe that can progress and look a little different. Maybe you can add that candle later, but it's literally like just showing up is where it's at in those times, is just doing it, and let it look messy and it doesn't even matter. But you're doing it, and that's what does matter. So from, I have one more question, and then we'll go into the wrap up question. So from the hardships that you've had to go through, like with your eating disorder, and then, you know, it kind of like coming to a head, and with the pandemic, really having to take a look and make that change. What successes have you seen, maybe in your career, maybe personally? What successes have you accomplished from having to rise above that struggle?
Deeper relationships, more honest relationship, one with myself. Whoa, I never thought that I could say that I love myself, that I'm proud of myself no matter what I do. And I wholeheartedly believe that now. And then deeper relationships with the people around me, of not feeling like I'm hiding something, right? There's this sense of like, I wasn't always being honest. And so it put a barrier between me and people, even if they didn't know it. I knew it, right? And some people might be like, you're great, I still loved you, you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't feeling that internally. So I think the successes is just this like internal heart opening to myself and to others in a way that I've never felt before. And then I've been able to step away from the corporate world fully and own my own business and do what I love. And I will say it's all been fueled by my life changes. Like, I am now running workshops on rituals, like how to bring ritual into your life to connect with self, others, communities, nature, prayer, all of these things that have helped change my life. And so I think, if we're, familiar, and I know this is all kind of about the hero's journey, right? And in the Mayan calendar, that's actually my sign. It's Octopu, which is the hero's journey. And you're constantly overcoming these things, but to learn more about yourself, to learn more about how you can serve the world, right? And so I think the biggest success is like going through this journey myself. So now, whether it's, your ritual is going to help you heal from an eating disorder, or just be more present mom, or, just find a deeper connection with yourself and your feet on the ground, right? That success of me going through it and it actually bringing me into a space of happiness and deeper connection and self-love and love for others is my greatest success, so that I can now do that as my life's work.
Absolutely. And it almost, because I can relate to that, and it almost makes having to go through all of that for a reason. It's almost like we've had to go through these really difficult things, and you're like, well, why? Like, right, we can play victim and ask why, but it is so empowering when you turn that around and you turn that into your passion and you help other people. I tell people now, I'm like, I help my old self where I was and what I needed in my life, and I just didn't have it, and I didn't see it, and I didn't have someone that like could help me with that. Like, I'm literally helping my old self pull myself out of that sooner, instead of having to go 10, 15 years, right? Me was 10, you was 15. And so that's obviously what you're doing too, is, you know, the pain that you've had to go through, the struggle that you've had to go through, you're now helping other people from that. And literally, that is like, to me, that is like the most beautiful of things, how people take that hardship, that struggle, and they're like, you know what, I'm not living there anymore for myself, and I want to help other people, you know, to pull them out of it and have them pull themselves out of that too.
Mhm.
So beautiful. And it sounds like you can totally align with that.
Yes,
That's
definitely.
very
And then I
cool.
think back to it, and it's like my friend who went through it herself, she helped me get there too. And so it's like the greatest success is going to be able to continue to help other people. And
And that ripple effect.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, the ripple effect is so beautiful.
Mm.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I just find it so beautiful when people share their very intimate stories. And I mean, it takes a lot of courage. So I appreciate you being on here and sharing that with us, because it does, it helps so many of us, including me. So with our wrap-up question, based on your hardships, based on your successes, how do you think we can do better as an individual, do better as a community, do better as a society? How do you feel like we could do better?
Mm. Man, this has been so alive in my life right now. So I feel like I could talk forever about it. So I'm going to do 2 points.
Perfect.
Speak up and speak out and be honest, whether that's about your story or what you're seeing in somebody else, with kindness, right? I think Brene Brown, yes, it is Brene. She says, kind is clear, clear is kind. But just use your words, tell your story, ask for support, lend it out to others, like with your voice. Just, it all starts with the words that we're sharing with everyone in that way, right? I wouldn't be here unless my friends spoke up and my family supported me. I wouldn't be here unless I spoke up and asked for support, right? And so just speak up and speak out, please. And then the second is go your own way. Like, what's happening out there in society, like this busyness, this chaos, like it's not working, right? It's not working. There are so many things that are not working in Western society. And I really think we need to start changing. And so that for you might be like making more time for rest, right? That for you might be, starting holistic like health practices, preventative healthcare versus just band-aids, right? It could look so different for each of us. It could look like just starting your compost or something, right? But like stop with the wagon wheel that we're all on, this hamster wheel that we're all on, and like go your own way, make your own path, listen to your gut in that way, because it's right? Like we humans are Earth, and like it's telling you something's off, like it's online to tell you that, and listen. So yeah, speak up, use your voice, and go your own way, get off the hamster wheel.
That is, I love those two things. And also too, like change, it starts with us. And we can't control anything but ourselves, right? So if the outside world is crazy, look inward and start to change yourself, how you want to be, how you want to show up. Those points are beautiful. You might need to rewind that and re-listen to it, because I really dig those points. Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I have truly enjoyed listening to this. I love your brain. It's very cool. I love your story and your feedback, and just for great points for whether, it doesn't matter what you're dealing with, but it's just great points for us, for anybody to look at and to do that inner work and just become better versions of ourselves. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. So tell us how people can connect with you. You do retreats, so tell us what you have going on and how we can connect with you.
Yes, I'm so excited, and I hope you will connect with me, even if it's just saying, hi, I resonate with your story. So that's the first way, like simply say hello, like, what's up? Hi, I feel that, I resonate with you, I can relate, would love to just chat. And then the second is, I'll go in order of when they're happening. April, we have our Awaken Outside retreats. We have a retreat coming up April 8th to the 10th. It's in Colorado, Backcountry Hut. So you can go to awakenoutside.com because we have some later in the year too. We bring in a chef. There's no running water. It's a true family experience, mindfulness, rhythm, music. Shout out to Lady Music, who will be playing live in the backcountry. So that's super fun. And those are 2 to 3 night retreats. And then the third is my workshop, From Routine to Ritual. We start on March 23rd. You can do it here in Denver in person, or we have an online option. And that is a 9-week program where I take you through the practice, the art of ritual. We move from connection to self, connection to community, connection to nature, and connection to something bigger, and how ritual can fuel a deeper connection in all of those areas of your life. And get off the hamster wheel and make it creative, make it every day, listen every day, make it different, make it you. Yeah, so that's that. And you can connect with me via Instagram for that, or my website. And will we provide that in the description, or should I say it?
Say it, but we can definitely provide it as well.
Okay, it's at Kelsey Bees, Kelsey_Bees, BEEZE.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll include those links to their retreat website, how you can go to that and be a part of it. I have actually gone to one of their retreats, and it was beautiful. And that's actually how we met each other. Was I went to the retreat, and it was just an amazing reset, realign within myself, and just giving myself that time to connect, and to, disconnect from, the busy outside world and reconnect with myself. And that was one of my focuses, was rewilding. And yeah, now I have my own backpacking course and retreat. So thank you so much for your retreat, and for who you are and what you're doing and how you're showing up and all that you offer us. It's needed and wanted and so appreciated.
Oh, well, thank you, Sarah, for literally making one of my points come true, of giving people the space to speak up and speak out and elevate stories and voices, and for your heart and for your passion.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, you guys go check out those links for whatever you're interested with. Connect with Kelsey, and let's just support each other, love each other, and just keep growing within ourselves and with each other. So thank you guys so much for showing up and being here. Much love and good vibes, and we'll see you later. Bye, you guys.